Untapped MTG coming to you with everybody's favorite 100 card singleton format, Commander. Hour of Devastation's brought us a lot of good cards, a lot of great cards, and a lot of hand cards. Nicol Bolas came with death and destruction, but he also came bearing gifts for the Commander format. So let's get right into it. The top 10 Commander cards from Hour of Devastation. Coming in at number 1, Solemnity. 2 and a white. Players can't get counters. Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. This helps with the Atraxa deck. This helps with any of the Commander decks that come out 2 years ago for the experience counters. It shuts off the experience counters. It stops you from putting +1/+1 counters on your creatures. It stops you from putting -1/-1 counters on other creatures. It's going to do good in Standard, but since we're just talking about Commander, we'll stick with that. With the Atraxa Proliferate, you can't put counters on something, so Proliferate kind of goes out the window. Also, with the experience counter commanders, you can't get the counters, and experience counters are counters given to the player, so it shuts off that as well. It shuts down things like Walking Ballista, can't get counters. Hangerback Walker can't have counters put on it. Aether Vial, Chalice of the Void, it shuts down all those and any other lands that get counters when they attack. This is going to shut down a lot of stuff. It's going to be pretty good in Commander. There's some Commander decks out there that are just based around counters and making real big creatures and swinging in. So this is going to slow some of them down. It's going to cause them to have to rethink things a little bit. And it's really going to put a damper on all those experience counter Commander decks that come out a couple of years ago. Then we have Mirage Mirror. It's an artifact for 3 mana. For two of any color mana, Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. This does not have to be a creature, artifact, enchantment, or land that you control. It can be any of those on the battlefield, any of your opponent's control. So at the beginning of your turn, you can kind of just pick the best creature on the field. You can copy it and attack with it, and end of turn it goes back to being an artifact. So this stops all the sorcery-based removal. Also, if you don't want it to be a creature and they play something that destroys all creatures, you can make it become an artifact, or you can make it become an enchantment, or you can just leave it alone. Also, if they were to try to instant speed kill it, if you copy a creature and attack, you can just pay 2 again and make it become an artifact or an enchantment, and the kill spell fizzles out. There's a lot of potential with this artifact, and I see it going into a lot of Commander decks, especially because it's colorless and there's no color requirement for it. Then we have another artifact, Monolith. It's a 3-cost artifact. It says tap to add 1 of any color to your mana pool. Anytime you're playing Commander, you always want to have things besides lands that can make mana. So, if you have your artifacts that can make mana, you always want another artifact that can make any color mana. And that way, if somebody plays something like Armageddon, you have to sacrifice all your lands or destroy all your lands. You still have these artifacts that can produce mana, so you're not completely helpless, but it doesn't really help if that's your only artifact. But in Commander, it's always good to have another source of mana, and this artifact for 3 to tap for any color of mana is going to be pretty good in Commander. Then we have the new cycling deserts that they come out with. The white one is for 1 and a white you cycle, and then so on and so forth for the colors. It's good to have another source of colored mana in these decks, because you can only, except for your basic lands, you can only have 1 of each card. So this is good to have some kind of different kind of land in your deck, so that if you need it, you can play it as a land. Or later on, if you've got too much mana, you need to try to find an answer, you can cycle it away to draw a card, to try to find the cards you need, or to just get better card draw. So I think these cycling lands are going to go good in their appropriate colors in Commander decks. Then we have Hour of Devastation. For 3 and a red, it says all creatures lose indestructible to end of turn. It deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker. This ability is going to be big because with the big creatures, it's going to deal 5 damage to all creatures and all planeswalkers that are not bolus planeswalkers, and all creatures lose indestructible. So if somebody swings with an indestructible creature and you block and knock it down to even 0 life, it's not going to kill it. But then if you play this, they lose indestructible, and then it kills all of them. And 5 damage for 5 mana is very good, and also that it loses indestructible. So anything that's a 4/4 indestructible or a 5/5 indestructible, something like if Gideon's a 5/5 indestructible, if you have something that lets you cast sorceries at instant speed, you can just wreck the board for 5 mana. So I think board wipes are always good. Board wipes that have certain rules or text as to what they can do and can't do is not always great. But for 5 mana, 2 red to deal 5 damage to everything and every planeswalker that's not Nicol Bolas planeswalker, this is something that we hadn't seen in red as far as removal goes. We always get like deal 3 damage to each creature, or deal 4 damage to each creature, or 2 damage to each creature. 5 damage to each creature in red is a pretty big deal. So I think it's going to be pretty good in these red decks that want to wipe the board, that might get into a bind and want to be able to play mass removal that they haven't been able to play because they don't have access to white or black or some of the other colors. Then Hour of Revelation for 3 white and a white and a white. It says it costs 3 less if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield. And then it says destroy all non-land permanents. So we're talking destroy creatures, destroy artifacts, destroy enchantments, destroy planeswalkers. Basically, it's a complete board purge, possibly for 3 mana, for just 3 white. And if you're thinking in a 4-player commander game or a 5-player commander game, having 10 non-land permanents on the battlefield is not going to be hard to do. And to be able to completely wipe the board and start over for just 3 mana is going to be very powerful in white decks because you get all these just destroy creatures, or you get something like In Hostilities that destroys creatures and the equipment they're attached to, or it exiles the creatures. But to be able to completely wipe the board of planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, and just be nothing but land left on the battlefield, this is huge. And for 3 mana, it's even better. So I see this card really making an impact in Commander, and I think it's going to be a pretty big deal, especially for decks that are playing white. Then as a collective group, we have all of the gods' final stands. Ketra's Last Stand, Kefnet's Last Word, Bantu's Last Reckoning, Hazret's Undying Fury, Ronos' Last Stand. All these are of their respective colors. Ketra's says your life total becomes equal to your starting total. So if you get to 4 for 3 mana, for a white, and a colorless, you can go right back up to 40. With Kefnet's Last Word, you gain control of artifact, creature, or enchantment. For Bantu's Last Reckoning, you store all creatures for 1 a black and a black. Hazret's Undying Fury for 4 and a red. You shuffle, exile top 4 cards of your library. You can cast any of those 5 mana cost or less. And then Ronos' Last Stand is for green and a green, create a 5/4 snake. Now, of course, the drawback to all these spells is that it says that lands you control do not untap on your next untap step. But for, potentially 3 mana, wipe the board, 3 mana, go back to 40, 4 mana, gain control of the biggest and baddest thing on the battlefield, 6 mana, cast 4 spells for free, and then 2 mana, make a 5/4 snake. It's kind of worth it. And then if, in Commander, you play a lot of artifacts that make mana, so if you tap the artifacts for the mana on your next turn, it doesn't really matter. The artifacts untap. As long as you don't tap any lands, then there's not really a drawback. So, these are probably going to be good in their respective colors for Commander decks, especially if you're in a lot of mana rocks, as they like to be called, or artifacts that produce colored mana. Then we have Razaketh the Foul-Blooded for 5 a black and a black and a black. This guy is expensive, but this guy is huge. He is 8/8 Flying Trample. It says pay 2 life, sack another creature, search your library for a card, and put it into your hand. This is basically an instant speed tutor as long as you have other creatures, and if you have 40 life, paying 2 life to continuously go search your library for creatures is a bargain. And for decks that are playing things that like to sack creatures, that can just get them right back. If you're going to pay 2 life, sack a creature, go get whatever you need to answer whatever threat is on the battlefield at that time. 2 life and sacking a creature is well worth it. Now for 8 mana, he's going to be hard to get on the battlefield. But, we're talking about Commander. He can be cheated in. There's ways that you can play him very early. You can play a lot of mana rocks to get him into turn 5, maybe turn 6. So 8 mana is not really a big deal in Commander as it would be in something like Standard. And especially in something like Modern where you never make it to 8 mana. Usually Modern is a very fast format. But in Commander, 8 mana is a lot easier to deal with. It's a lot easier to come up with. And then you just have this plethora of spells from over the years of Magic that just let you cheat stuff onto the battlefield and sneak things into the battlefield that make it a lot easier to play an 8-cost creature. And you also think that you're only playing 1. So by the time you get him in your hand, you're probably going to have 8, 9, 10 mana already available anyway. So I see this one making a big impact for decks that are playing black in Commander to be able to just instant speed, search for whatever answer you need at the time, to be able to answer whatever threat is on the battlefield. Then we have Neheb the Eternal. For 3 red and a red, he's a 4/6 with Afflict 3. This is a new mechanic that says that if this creature is blocked, it still deals 3 damage to the blocking creature's controller. So even if you block this thing, it's still going to deal 3 damage to you. If you don't block, it's going to deal 4 damage to you. But then it also says that in your post-combat main phase, you get to add 1 red for each point of life lost by your opponent that turn. It's not just combat damage, it's any point of life lost. So if you pay 1, shock a guy or girl, pay another 1, lightning bolt, all of a sudden you're setting at 5 mana on your next main phase, and it only costs you 2 mana to get there. So this is going to be real good to try to ramp up some bigger red spells. You could also use this to cast Hezret's Undying Fury. You know, pay 3, deal 6 damage to your opponent on your second main phase, cast it with that 6 mana, and you didn't have to tap any land to pay it. So this has a lot of possibilities, and that Afflict 3 is very powerful. I played against this card twice during pre-release. And pre-release and sealed and all in draft, this thing is going to be very powerful. It's hard to deal with. You have to get it off the field. In Commander, it's also a legendary creature, so it could be the general for your deck. For it to be able to just keep coming back and keep coming back, it's going to be hard to find answers for this thing. And even if it's blocked, it's still going to deal damage to you is a big deal that you really need to be able to deal with it pretty quick. And then adding the mana on the backside is just, you know, icing on the cake. And last but certainly not least, you can't talk about Commander without talking about the new legendary gods. Scorpion God, the Locust God, and the Scarab God. The Locust God is 4, a red and a blue. It's a 4/4 flyer. It says when you draw a card, you may put a 1/1 flying haste insect creature on the battlefield. And then for 2, a red and a blue, you can draw a card and then discard a card. So every time you draw, you get a 1/1 flying haste creature. Then you have the Scarab God for 3, a blue and a black. It's a 5/5. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. For 2, a blue and a black, you exile target creature card from a graveyard. You make a copy of that creature and put it on the battlefield, and it becomes a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. So whatever it is, when it dies, you get to make a 4/4 zombie that's also the same types and put it onto the battlefield. It doesn't just have to be creatures in your graveyard. It says target creature card in a graveyard. So it could be a creature card in their graveyard. It's a pretty big deal. Played against this at pre-release as well, and it is hard to deal with because it just starts exiling creatures, making more creatures, and it can get out of hand fast. And then finally the Scorpion God for 3, a black and a red. It's a 6/5. It says when a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may draw a card. And then for 1, a black and a red, you put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. You're going to get a lot of card draw black and red, which is something that black and red usually don't have unless you're having to discard cards or sacrifice creatures or lose life. So to put a -1/-1 counter on a creature, that creature dies, you get card draw advantage. This is really, really good for black and red. And then, of course, all the gods have the same little thing at the bottom that says, when this creature dies, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. This is really good for Commander because if you've played Commander or you know anything about Commander, you know that when your Commander dies, it goes back to the command zone, and then it costs 2 additional mana to cast for each time it goes back to the command zone. So if it originally cost 6, when it dies, it goes to command zone, then it costs 8 to cast, and then 10, and then so on and so forth. With these as your Commander, when they die, they go to the graveyard, and then on end step they come back to your hand. You only have to pay the original casting cost to put them back on the battlefield the next turn. That's huge when you think about in Commander, when a lot of the times you're having to pay 6, 8, 10, 12 mana, spend your whole turn just to play your Commander, just for somebody to kill it again before it gets back around to your turn. You don't have anything you can do. I think that just this little line of text on all 3 of these gods is really going to make a difference in Commander, that you're really going to start seeing these 3 as Commanders a lot more often, just because their casting cost doesn't get more and more when they die. So that's all we got for our top 10 Hour of Devastation Commander cards. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked the cards that you saw. I'm sure there are other cards in the set that you might think deserve to be top 10, and that's fine. We all have our own opinions. That's what makes Magic great. You can have your favorite cards. I can have my favorite cards. If you have some cards that you think I missed, you can leave them in the comments below. If there's other videos you'd like to see, other top 10s you'd like to have done, you put that in the comments below as well. You can follow me on Twitter at UntappedMTG. Also, check us out over at legitmtg.com, where our videos are posted over there, along with other articles, vlogs, deck techs, different things. Everything from kitchen table to commander, you can find at legitmtg.com. And also, all orders over $2 ship free. So head over there, give them a check out, and let them know that I sent you. So this is Untapped MTG. Top 10 cards from Hour of Devastation for commander. Have a great day.